Okay, let's talk about something we hear all the time: self-care, self-love, confidence. We're told to practice it, to build it, but there's a really fine line, isn't there? I mean, it's so easy to get confused and start wondering, am I actually loving myself or am I just being selfish? Or even worse, narcissistic? So today, we are going to get to the bottom of what these words really mean and figure out how to tell them apart. Right? Is setting that boundary a healthy act of self-care, or are you just being selfish? Is that person you know truly confident? Or is it something else entirely, something more grandiose? These are the exact questions we're going to tackle. Because when you start to look at the motivation behind these behaviors, you can learn to see them for what they really are. So let's start with the foundation, the healthy baseline for this whole conversation: genuine self-love. And let's be super clear right from the get-go. This is not about being arrogant or vain. It's the absolute bedrock of our mental and emotional well-being. So what is it really? Well, self-love is this deep, comprehensive appreciation for who you are right now, flaws and all. And it's not a passive thing. You show it in how you treat yourself, with kindness, with respect, and with a real commitment to your own growth. And here's the most important part: it's an inside job. It doesn't need anyone else's approval or validation to exist. You can almost think of self-love as being built on 4 key pillars. Yeah, it starts with the things we hear about a lot, like self-care and self-acceptance. But it also requires what's called self-contact, basically intentionally paying attention to your own inner world. But look at that last one, self-compassion. That right there is the secret sauce. It's the ability to be kind to yourself, especially when you mess up, that really holds the whole thing together. And this is exactly why it's so powerful. Genuine self-love is the ultimate antidote to that endless, exhausting trap of perfectionism. It's what allows you to truly believe, my value is inherent. It's here right now, instead of constantly tying your worth to your next accomplishment. I mean, that shift in mindset, it is a complete game changer for how you handle stress and anxiety. But, and this is where it all gets a little tricky, sometimes what looks like self-love from the outside, that really loud, performative confidence, it isn't love at all. It's actually a carefully constructed mask, hiding a totally different reality underneath. And that mask, that's often a sign of narcissism. Now, here is probably the biggest misconception out there. Narcissism is not an excess of self-love. It's the exact opposite. It's a compensation for a profound lack of it. It's a defense mechanism, a shield against really deep-seated insecurity. And it is so crucial to understand that we're not just throwing a buzzword around here. Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a real clinical diagnosis. This isn't just a personality quirk, It's a pervasive, long-term pattern of grandiosity, a bottomless pit of a need for admiration, and a truly profound lack of empathy for other people. To put that into perspective, the official diagnostic manual, the DSM-5, it lists 9 specific criteria for NPD. A person has to meet at least 5 of them to actually be diagnosed. So again, this isn't some casual label we can just slap on someone. It's a very specific and serious condition. So what does this actually look like in real life? Well, it's that over-the-top, exaggerated sense of self-importance. It's that constant hunger for praise and admiration, and a deep-seated belief that they're entitled to special treatment. But the real key, the one that makes it all so destructive, is that profound lack of empathy. That's what allows a narcissist to exploit others without a second thought, all just to feed their own fragile ego. If you only take one thing away about narcissism from this whole discussion, please let it be this: it is the polar opposite of self-love. That big, grandiose exterior is just a shield, and it's built to protect a fragile inner core that feels deeply, deeply insecure and worthless. Self-love comes from a place of fullness. Narcissism comes from a place of emptiness. All right, so we have self-love on one end of the spectrum and narcissism on the other. But what about good old-fashioned selfishness? Where does that fit into all this? Well, it turns out selfishness is kind of like a two-sided coin. See, on one side, you've got what we could call healthy selfishness. This is actually an essential part of self-love. It's about setting boundaries to protect your time and energy. It's saying no so you can avoid burnout. But then you flip the coin, and you've got destructive selfishness. This is driven by greed and insecurity. It's about taking from others with absolutely no regard for the damage it does to trust and relationships. So, now we've got our 3 key concepts on the table: self-love, narcissism, and selfishness. Let's put them all side by side to really, truly nail down the core distinctions between them. So what's the ultimate litmus test? When you see some kind of self-focused behavior, either in yourself or someone else, how can you tell what's really driving it? Well, it all boils down to one single thing: how that person relates to reality. And here it is. This is the absolute key difference. A person with healthy self-love can accept reality, which means they can admit when they're wrong. And that ability is the absolute foundation for all personal growth. A narcissist, on the other hand, simply cannot accept any reality that threatens their fragile, perfect self-image. For them, admitting fault is basically impossible, which means they get stuck. They can never truly grow. This table just puts it all together so clearly. Look at the motivations. Self-love comes from acceptance, while both narcissism and destructive selfishness spring from insecurity. Or check out empathy. It's high in self-love and totally absent in narcissism. But for me, the most telling row is admitting fault. See, someone who's just being selfish might admit they're wrong if it gets them what they want in the end. But for a narcissist, it's nearly impossible because it would shatter their entire worldview. Okay, so knowing the difference is the crucial first step. But how do we actively cultivate more of that genuine, healthy self-love in our own lives? Let's get practical and look at a couple of things you can do. Here are two really powerful places to start. First, actively work on accepting your own imperfections. This means letting go of that impossible ideal of being perfect and instead practicing self-forgiveness when you stumble. Second, focus on building healthy boundaries. And remember, saying no isn't about being difficult. It's a profound act of self-compassion that protects you from people-pleasing and burnout. And that really brings us to the final, most important thought. The next time you find yourself prioritizing your own needs, just pause for a second and ask yourself this one simple question. Is this action coming from a place of genuine self-acceptance, or is it coming from a place of deep insecurity? The answer to that question, well, it reveals everything.